Wow, I had no idea SWV had this many fans. Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to the 90s. So this is technically a part 2 to this video here. I'd recommend checking out this one first if you want a bit more context, but you don't need to necessarily watch that in order to understand what we're talking about here. Short version, there's an old rumor that artists who win the Best New Artist Grammy are cursed in one way or another to have either failing careers, no notoriety afterwards, or just generally a bunch of shit to happen to them. This series is meant to kinda loosely analyze how much merit there is to that old rumor. We did the first half of the 90s in the last episode, and honestly, our results there turned out about like 50-50. Many Best New Artist winners went on to have outstanding careers and very long futures in the industry. But the ones who didn't...
So we give this Grammy back now?
Whoo boy. It definitely can be the kiss of death for a certain type of artist. And we'll be closing out the decade covering the B&A wins from 1995 to 1999 this time around. And where the early 90s were an unpredictable cavalcade of trends and fads, the latter half is... well, also a cavalcade of trends and fads, but in its own unique and very interesting kind of way. The 90s as a whole is just a very tumultuous time for music, and the Grammys, as we learned last time, didn't usually get it right. Let's get this train started again, shall we? So just as a refresher, even though you just saw a great big 1995 flash on the screen, the Grammys take place early in the year, so the nominees are chosen based on music from the year previous. So when we're talking about the 95 Grammys, we're actually talking about music from 1994. I know this is confusing. I don't make the rules here. Don't yell at me, yell at the Grammys. But man, 1994, y'all, what a huge year for music, in both good and bad ways. Hip-hop and R&B's meteoric rise is now impossible to ignore. Alt-rock is gaining huge footholds, and even genres like country and punk that were struggling to find a direction in the late 80s were finally gaining ground again. Hell, even the soundtrack scene for 94 was bustling. That's how crazy 1994 is, people. Buckle up. But unfortunately, 94 was also a very chaotic and troubling year for a lot of folks. Pearl Jam begins their legal hell fight with Ticketmaster that would leave them buried in red tape for decades. Lisa Left Eye Lopez sets fire to her boyfriend's Nikes after a fight and ends up burning their entire house down. Grace Slick threatens a bunch of cops with a shotgun and through some miracle only gets community service for it. And more power to her. But sadly, the year is ultimately punctuated by the sudden suicide of Kurt Cobain in April, officially ending Nirvana and unofficially beginning the end of grunge. Now, 94 was still a great year for grunge, and it did do its best to hang in there, but when Cobain died, it basically died with him. But despite all that, it was an insane year with a very large talent pool to draw from. But did the Grammy actually pick talent?
And the best new artist is...
Oh my god, could you even fucking imagine?
Sheryl Crow.
Huh, really? Sheryl Crow? Damn, that's not a bad choice at all. Yeah, well, it probably wouldn't be my first choice personally, but I don't have, like, any issues with it. Crow released her outstanding debut record, Tuesday Night Music Club, back in '93, and god damn it. Again, I have to interject because the Grammys are weird. See, even though this album was released in 1993, the cutoff date to qualify for Grammy nominations actually begins in August of the year previous to the previous year. I know this is confusing. Again, the slogan for this series of videos, don't yell at me, yell at the Grammys. And this album came out on August 3rd of 93, so it literally fell right under the wire there. As far as recognition goes, better late than never. I'm guessing Cheryl didn't have many complaints either way. You know, it's weird, we don't really talk much about Sheryl Crow these days, do we? But she was a very big damn deal in the 90s, and even beyond then. I'd say her falling off point comes around like the 2010s when she started pivoting more towards country and straight up Americana, but like, she never had a huge career-killing bomb or anything. She doesn't really have a train record that I'm aware of. She never did anything too embarrassing or humiliating to help tarnish her image that much. Well, maybe dating Eric Clapton in the 90s wasn't a great idea, but you know, that was more... Cheryl had her big moment, and she was one of the few that was able to make it last. And Tuesday Night Music Club... Yeah, this is still a banger, even I gotta admit. And hell, this isn't even close to her best record, I'd say, but, you know, even at this early stage, God, you can just tell this gal's gonna have a long, fruitful career. And you know, she did! She went on to have an extremely successful career with many great follow-ups, dozens of awards, and millions in global sales. She might not be a Mariah or a Toni Braxton necessarily, but she's more than secured her legacy as an artist. She's not an unreasonable choice by any means. Not at all. But again, this is 1994. Again, this is one of the biggest years for music out of the entire decade almost. Is she really the best choice we could have gone with here? Well, arguably, there are lots of other good candidates, but sadly the Grammys really whiffed on most of their other picks this year. Though they did get one very, very, very much right. I will give credit when we get to it. But a lot of their picks, yeah, they didn't stand a chance. Let's get the people who obviously weren't walking away with a trophy that night out of the way first. Yeah, remember this? This used to be a thing. God, I bet more people remember the Weird Al version more these days, but like, yeah, Crash Test Dummies. Who'd have thought? Yup, Crash Test Dummies won a seat here. The humble folk rock quartet from Winnipeg, whose hit single, Oh Jesus, of course this wasn't gonna win. If they did, how the hell would you even call them up to the stage? Yeah, the Crash Test Dummies, you know, they weren't terrible or anything, but Best New Artist in 1990 goddamn 4? Yeah, hell no, I'm sorry. Another big nominee that year? Ooh, okay, so this one makes at least a bit more sense. I mean, come on, it's impossible to forget stuff like The Sign, All That She Wants, Don't Turn Around. Yeah, these songs will be stuck in your head for at least a week now. You're welcome. But while these guys weren't an obvious one-hit wonder like the Crash Test Dummies, they were what I like to call a one-album wonder. All of the songs you remember from these guys, yeah, they are from this record. They've never done anything else that big, and unless you're a super fan, you probably haven't heard most of their other songs. The Grammys had a really bad habit of picking flash-in-the-pan acts for the BNA, and while this would have been an understandable pick at the time, given how successful this record was, I mean, come on, this has temporary fad written all over it. I don't know, this style of like dancey club music was already on the outs by 94, so, I mean, it's fire, but there's no fucking future in it, I'm sorry. This nomination is a big whiff. Speaking of big whiffs. Okay, I'm probably being a little bit mean. Counting Crows are perfectly respectable for what they are, I guess, if you're into that. And you know, there's a part of me that gets this nod too. When Mr. Jones dropped, it was just goddamn everywhere. The pop stations played it, the rock stations played it. I think I even heard this song on a country station once. It was literally just every freaking where. And to be fair to the band, they weren't complete flameouts either. They did see even bigger hits, including the one you probably remember even better than Mr. Jones. Long December, and there's reason. Again, perfectly respectable artists in their own right, in their own lane. They spent most of their time farting around the adult contemporary charts and never rose much higher than this particular moment. But, I mean, again, best new artist of 94? Hell no, fam. I will be damned, though, if the Grammys didn't get one of their other picks right. Just one. But I feel like they actually got it very, very right.
Welcome to paradise.
Yup. I'm just as shocked as you are. I did mention Green Day in the previous video when I was talking about 1990 and their actual debut, but again, you also gotta remember the Grammys pick Best New Artist, not entirely at least based on your first record, but the first record you put out that people start paying attention to, and this was the year of Dookie. Everyone was listening to Dookie. I mean, yeah, people, as huge and successful and ever-present as this record was, it was pretty hard to ignore by anyone. But even then, I'm still kinda shocked it's here. Remember, this is the Grammys we're talking about, folks. The out-of-touch, safest possible choice, oblivious to a comical degree Grammys. And outside of, like, maybe Blondie in the 80s, this was one of the first time the Grammys ever recognized punk rock. But that was just 1994, y'all. There was just so much good stuff. Between them and Cheryl, I'm glad there were at least a couple good picks for this year. Because man, oh man, people... Yeah, the snubs on this particular side are just mind-boggling. So many great artists debuted, and no one else is here. Oasis is definitely Maybe, Nas's Illmatic, Blur's Parklife, The Offspring's Smash. Again, not all debuts there, but important first notice records that all would have probably qualified. And that's just like the tip of the iceberg, folks. Outkast's Southern Playalistic Cadillac Music, Usher's self-titled, Aaliyah's Age Ain't Nothing But a Number, Coolio's It Takes a Thief. Like, seriously, 94 was a fantastic year for hip-hop. Remember, this is also the year of... You gotta come up in your waist, please don't shoot up the place. Wow. Yeah, enough said. But rock is certainly no slouch either. Jeff Buckley's Grace, Bush's Better Than It Has Any Right to Be, 16 Stone, Cake's Sly and Goofy Motorcade of Generosity, Dave Matthews Band's Under the Table and Dreaming, the album that launched a billion stoners, Portishead's Dummy, Sunny Day Real Estate's Diary, Holes Lived Through This. Again, not a debut, but given how much of a splash that made, I absolutely believe it would have counted. You could also say the same for albums like Beck's Mellow Gold or Live's Throwing Copper. There's also Korn's self-titled debut and Machine Head's Burn My Eyes. Maybe not the best aged records necessarily, but even as far back as 94, we begin to see the buds of nu metal starting to blossom. The thing about 94 is a lot of newer artists popped up around this time and really began to cultivate the ground that grunge had helped initially till, and they helped build the trends we'd see later on into the decade and beyond. Here is where we see the initial movements of pop punk, nu metal, post-grunge, and even... What's with these homies dissing my girl? Who the hell is this? I have never heard of these guys before in my life. And this isn't even everything I could have put in this section. Rock, hip-hop, pop, country. Throw a rock in any direction in 1994 and it'd land close to a potential Best New Artist candidate. And yet... Look, I don't have a grunge against the Crash Test Dummies, but like, compared to Biggie fucking Smalls, no! See, this one is interesting because while I do respect and agree with Cheryl being one of the nominations, I seriously do have to wonder if she's really the best choice. Again, with all this going on, I'm just saying, are we sure Tuesday Night Music Club? Are we sure? If it were my pick, I'd absolutely say this should probably go to Green Day or Biggie, or hell, given how the decade would eventually shake out, maybe even one of the outliers like Beck or Outkast would have also been a good choice. But it isn't about whether I agree that they should have won or not, it's were they affected by the curse? And like, no, I can't say that at all. Hell, at the time, she was actually considered one of the most successful BNA winners ever. She also scored the best record and best pop vocal for All I Wanna Do. Did she have the biggest career in the world? Well, for a while there, she honestly did. But she did taper off after a while. Granted, it took her a long while to get there, but yeah, she eventually winded things down, whereas some of her contemporaries are still considered some of the biggest acts in the world to this day. But like, I can't hold that against her. Cheryl just decided after a while that she didn't need to chase success and pivoted to a musical direction that was more personally enriching to her. She still enjoys more than enough love and success, and you know what? More power to her. Cheryl bucks the curse. Bravo. You love to see it. Woo. Okay, so 94 was kinda nuts, but as it often is with particularly wild years, the following years after tend to be much less exciting, and in 95,
I believe that love is the answer. Look around your world, pretty baby. Is it everything you hoped it'd be?
yeah, things do get a bit less exciting, and it's not just by like comparison either. In terms of new artists with super hot debuts, yeah, it definitely gets more quiet. You know, it honestly reminds me of these last few years we've been going through in the post-pandemic era, where it just feels like everyone has already dropped all the hot shit they cooked up during quarantine, and now that we're in 2023, most of that stuff is spent, and like, I mean, the year is far from over, but I mean, you know. But yeah, 95 was a bit of a cooling off period, and there were a lot of factors that went into that. It was a very transitory year. Grunge was dying and had no idea what new shape to take. Country was just starting to figure out how to manage the success it had garnered in the 90s, and hip-hop and R&B are officially mega titans and are starting to leave big marks on the music scene as a whole. So whereas the 95 Best New Artist almost gives me too much to talk about, the 96 winner and nominees...
And the Grammy goes to, my other homeboys, Hootie and the Blowfish.
Yeah, nothing says this year was kind of boring other than Hootie and the freaking Blowfish, am I right? Oh, but y'all, it's just one of those things. I cannot adequately explain this to you if you weren't there for it. Cracked Rear View was everywhere. Everybody bought that album. Everybody. Hell, back when that record dropped, I originally picked it up on cassette. But that same year, a few months later, I'd also saved enough allowance to buy my first CD Walkman. So when I bought that Walkman, I also picked it up on CD too. And then a few weeks went by, my parents heard me listening to it out of nowhere and decided, hey, we really like this, so they bought their own CD copy of it too. My house had 3 goddamn copies of Hootie and the Blowfish's Cracked Rear View. This record has gone diamond. Twice. Y'all, I was there and I still don't completely understand it. But to be a little more, level-headed about things, it honestly was the right record at the exact right time. See, the absolutely crushing wave of cynicism the early 90s brought on with the likes of, grunge and gangsta rap and MTV. All of those attitudes were kind of taking their toll by 1995.
Are you being sarcastic, dude? I don't even know anymore.
The news cycle was just full of artists either ODing, getting arrested, or just straight up getting killed. We lost Cobain, we lost Eazy-E, and sadly we're gonna lose a lot more before the 90s is said and done. The early 90s were a time when people stopped being polite.
And start getting real.
But by 95, shit was getting a little too real. And Hootie and the Blowfish, they had zero interest in being real. Or at the very least, the kind of real that involved being a jaded, angry, cynical asshole. And people found it very refreshing. And to their credit, yeah, a lot of these songs do still bop. It's still a great record. I'm glad I had plenty of copies of this. I mean, sure, they ended up being a flash in the pan, but I can't say, at the time at least, that this was an unreasonable choice necessarily. It did make sense. No one can predict the future. And if you just look at how many copies this damn thing sold, no one would have blamed you for placing your bets on Hootie. But come on, 1995 may not have been the most electric year in music, but surely we could do better than Hootie, right? Turns out we actually could. Most of the choices for this year are pretty damn decent. We haven't had a lineup of nominees this consistent since the '94 Grammys, though it still isn't aces across the board necessarily. For example,
what if God was one of us?
Yeah, anyone remember this? This is Joan Osborne. No relation to the other one. Her debut, Relish, did see a decent amount of success, I guess, mostly off the back of her hit single, One of Us. A cute, if insanely derpy little thought experiment. I mean, I'm pretty sure I had this exact same thought experiment the first time I took an edible. But it's a cute song. I like it. I actually had this record too back in the day, and it's not half bad. I am still surprised to see it here though. Not because it was bad or anything, but because it honestly wasn't that successful. One of Us did chart, but not super high. A lot of the other singles off of that record never saw any real traction. The record didn't even sell particularly well. Hell, it had trouble getting to gold, and that was when it was popular. No disrespect meant to Joan. She is a perfectly decent artist for what she's doing and everything. But even at the time, folks kind of wrote her off as a one-hit wonder. I have to guess at what the Grammys saw in her that literally no one else did.
Rolling Stone magazine called her the next explosion waiting to happen. Sounds pretty good to me.
Rolling Stone was full of shit, and so are you, Jay Leno. Thankfully, for everyone else who made the cuts, yeah, it makes much more sense. For example,
And I'm here to remind.
Yeah, Alanis. Fuck yes. Jagged Little Pill dropped in 95, and yeah, if it wasn't something off of Cracked Rear View playing on the radio at any given moment, it was something from JLP. This one was also all over the shit. Another record that just absolutely dominated the year. And rightly so, because
It's like rain. I've got one hand in my pocket, and the other one is playing the piano. Don't be alarmed if I fall head over feet. You ought to know.
yeah, y'all, J-Pill still goes hard, don't at me. Technically though, this is also not Alanis's debut. Hell, if you're Canadian, you know damn well Alanis was kicking about long before this record happened. But again, it's not your first. It's the first one that makes people notice, and everyone took notice of this beauty. If Hootie didn't win, Alanis absolutely would have. Almost sure shot. And she's not the only heavy hitter we have on this list, people.
I wanna be down.
Oh, Brandy. Y'all, I miss Brandy. Dude, I loved Brandy back in the day. If you were listening to the hip-hop and R&B stations, stuff like I Wanna Be Down, Baby, and Broken Hearted were just as ever present as songs from those other two records. And while it wasn't warmly received critically, it was still a major success. And even though I'd say it's very dated in its production, I do be fucking with that pan flute though. I do still totally fuck with this record. Brandy went on to also have a very successful career, even if she would also cool down a fair bit by the mid-2000s. But, you know, still, at the time, an absolutely reasonable pick. We fuck with Brandy in this house. Now, the last nominee, when I say who it is, y'all are gonna be like, what the hell? How did she not win? But, like, okay, y'all.
Let's go, girls.
I know, but like, hang on, calm down. I need to give you some context. Yeah, folks, Shania goddamn Twain is one of the nominees for this year too. Holy shit. Now, I understand we all know and love Come On Over, Man I Feel Like a Woman. That don't impress me much. I'm gonna get you good. Wow, I forgot this existed. This is new metal. This rocks. But y'all, remember where we're at. This is 1996. We're not talking about Come On Over, Shania. We're talking about The Woman in Me, Shania.
Whose bed have your boots been under?
Yeah, with this nomination, we kind of have a Mariah Carey situation on our hands. This isn't quite the record everyone remembers, unless you're just really into 90s country. If you were into country back in the 90s, oh yeah, this thing annihilated the charts at the time. This is your Shania record if you were banging hard on the CMT circuit. But this stuff,
Yeah, the woman in me.
well, it ain't Come On Over, I'll say that for sure. Honestly, it feels more like the Grammys were just throwing a bone to the country crowd. It's not her best work, and I'm honestly kind of glad this didn't win. But still, between Brandy, Alanis, and freaking Shania Twain, I'd say we have a solid stack of candidates to choose from here. It's honestly pretty ridiculous in hindsight. So how the fuck did Hootie end up winning it? There honestly aren't too many big snubs on this list, but there are a few of note, and I'd say the few that do stick out really do sting. A huge snub in my book is D'Angelo's Brown Sugar. Another big one that's missing here is the Foo Fighters' self-titled, ODB's Return to the 36 Chambers, Raekwon's Only Built for Cuban Links. Again, the Academy is doing themselves absolutely no favor by ignoring so much notable hip-hop. Tiger Lily by Natalie Merchant also got snubbed this year, which, okay, that probably isn't the strongest choice, but again, given how much the Grammy likes the safe, non-threatening, low-energy kind of stuff, I mean, this seems like an absolute lock, right? Some longer shots that also debuted, but would have been cool to see here. The Chemical Brothers' Exit Planet Dust, AFI's Answer That and Stay Fashionable, Incubus's Fungus Among Us, Supergrass's I Should Coco. If you really wanted to stretch here, I suppose you could also include Pulp's Different Class. Not a debut and not as big of a deal in the States, mind, but also undeniably a pretty big breakout. Same could be said for Goo Goo Dolls' A Boy Named Goo. God, as big and as all over the place as Name was back in 1996, I'm kinda shocked it's not here. But outside of like a few of the biggest hitters like D'Angelo or the Foos, I'd actually say the Grammys didn't do a half bad job of picking the candidates this time around. Well, except for the winner. Yeah, even though this year wasn't nearly as hectic as the last, there were still a lot more artists way more deserving than Hootie to win this award, I'd say. It also says something that in a year where every other nominee is an extremely talented woman, the trophy ends up going to the most basic, boring group of bland dudes you can muster together. Just saying, Grammys, it's kind of a bad look. And that's also the thing about Hootie. This award, I think at least, absolutely contributed to their eventual downfall. They blew up so big and so quickly that they weren't even marginally prepared or equipped to handle it. Hootie wasn't even necessarily trying to make that big of an impression. They were just basically a decent bar band that was lucky enough to strike while the moment was hot. And when their next album turned out to be more of the same shit, the moment that they struck in was long past. These guys were the right band at the right time. But that time was also a very, very short window. To his credit, Darius Rucker was able to spin his initial success into a respectable enough country career, and Hootie themselves would reunite and do little stuff here and there. But as far as Hootie and the Curse goes, yeah, I'd say they were absolutely cursed. These guys basically won the lottery with their record, and Cracked Rear View was basically a scratch-off ticket. But like a lot of lottery winners, they had no clue how to properly manage their winnings, and they had burned through everything they'd earned before you could say let her cry. So I feel like this one absolutely is fair to call cursed. Again, it just made more sense at the time. And now we arrive at 97, or rather 96, based on the music we're talking about. God, I will never get used to how awkward this structure has to be. Things started cooling down in 95, and they get a bit cooler in 96. And while 96 may not have quite as many milestones as earlier years, it is still an important transitional year for music. This is the year that the early 90s officially dies, in my opinion. And not just because of, like, chronology or whatever. Grunge is all but dead, only 2 years after Cobain's passing, and likewise, hip-hop was also dealt a massive blow after the sudden death of Tupac Shakur in July, and a lot of the potential trends and chosen stalwarts of the early 90s finally begin to flame out or move on. Criss Cross releases their last record, Arrested Development break up after their disastrous follow-up to their hit record, MC Hammer files for bankruptcy. It is officially time to put away your flannel, your dashikis, and your Don't Have a Cowman t-shirts, and move on to the next big thing. But what is the next big thing? 96 isn't the most uneventful year of the decade, but it is probably going to be the least eventful we cover in this video. There were great candidates to choose from, to be fair, but probably not as many as you'd think. I'm just saying, the well for new talent is a lot drier compared to previous years, which means that the winner this time around...
LeAnn Rimes.
Yeah, remember her? So I have to admit, I may be a teensy bit out of my depth on this one. By 96, 97, I was super deep into my new metal, alt rock. Everything that isn't heavy sucks and is lame and gay. Oh, honey, you sweet summer child. No, it isn't. You are. And someday you will be in a place where you can finally accept that truth, and you will be so much more happier for it. As a result, I barely remember anything about LeAnn Rimes. I was not listening to her at this time. I wasn't listening to a lot of country. Actually, I honestly don't remember hearing about LeAnn Rimes at all until after her big Grammy win, when her version of How Do I Live dropped. Like, that was the first time I remember hearing about LeAnn Rimes. Which, even then, the Trisha Yearwood version of that song was more popular in my neighborhood, so yeah, I officially have no nostalgia when it comes to LeAnn. I barely remember she even existed. I think the only reason I remember her at all these days is because of that one line in the Bare Naked Ladies song.
When I bust rhymes, speak like Leanne rhymes, because I'm all about value.
What the hell did that even mean? But you know, that's just me. For the folks who grew up with a bit more country in their household, you know, she absolutely had a strong presence. Hell, she would remain notable in the country world for well over a decade after her initial spark. And even today, she is still working, she still puts out records, and she stars in movies that look ripped straight out of that one Netflix Christmas movie meme. She does have defenders, and I'm sure they're gonna be very vocal in the comments of this video, but y'all, I'm sorry, I'm not one of them. She is just very, very much not my thing. I'm honestly having trouble seeing the hype, especially based on the strength of her big breakout, Blue. I listened to the record, it is very dated. A lot of the tracks here are just covers, and the big hit, the one that also won Best Female Country Performance, I can't help but feel like Rhymes only won because she can do a reasonably solid Patsy Cline impression. God, I am just asking for the comments to get hairy on this one. But y'all, like I said, I listened to the record. I skimmed over some of her other stuff too. I'm sorry, I don't get it. Is this really the best 1996 could muster? Well, yes and no. A few deserving folks did also get nods this year. I'd say it's about 50-50 though. For example...
Dreams last for so long.
Oh, Jewel. How soon we forget. But again, like Hootie and like Ace of Base, she definitely made more sense at the time. Her debut, Pieces of You, was just all over the place. It spawned 2 top 10 hits, millions of sales, hype through the roof. Who Will Save Your Soul and You Were Meant for Me were all over VH1 and the radio. Her weird, incoherent poetry book was on the New York Times bestseller list. But to her credit, she also hung in there a while. I'd say until about like 03 or 04. Literally until 0304. Thanks for making that easy for me, Jewel. And, you know, to be completely fair to her, I still do really like her big hits. Those hooks are hard as hell to get out of your head, I gotta admit. But once people realized she wasn't the next Sheryl Crow, her star fell pretty quickly. I mean, she does well enough for herself on the reality TV circuit these days. I can't say I feel too bad for her. Who else do we have on the list? The Tony Rich Project? What the hell is the Tony Rich Project?
And nobody knows it but me.
Oh yeah, I remember this song. Oh yeah, I like this song. I always thought this was a Babyface track though. Go figure. Again, it could just be that I wasn't listening to a lot of music like this around this time, but outside of his big hits, I literally remember nothing else about this guy, and information on him is also a bit scarce too, at least compared to a lot of the other big winners. He was an R&B guy. He was also on LaFace Records during their big heyday. Oh hey, another connection to Babyface. Weird. His first record saw a lot of success, but there were reports of him being hard to work with, and that he apparently had a bit of an ego. Second record kind of flopped, and y'all probably know how the rest of this story goes. I hope I'm not damning myself to another flood of angry comments like I did with SWV, but this guy... yeah, another one that just screams one-hit wonder. Honestly, he just sounds way too much like Babyface. And, yeah, I think that about says it all, doesn't it? Who else have we got here? Oh, okay, yeah, that is what I'm talking about right there. Hell yes, no doubt. 96 was also the year of Tragic Kingdom, and this record was also inescapable, but like, in a good way, you know what I mean? No Doubt didn't start the third wave ska movement, but Tragic Kingdom, man, it did a lot to add fuel to the fire. If I have to pick a winner out of the nominees, yeah, these guys make the most sense to me. It's probably them. Tragic Kingdom was such an important record to 90s rock, and no doubt, and even Gwen Stefani's solo work has also left an extremely big stamp on the pop sphere. Hell, even the rest of the band without Gwen has gone on to do some interesting stuff. Seriously, go look up Dream Car, they're good. Top tier choice for BNA here. Absolutely respect the hell out of this. You know what's even weirder? Even though this would be my pick, personally, they are not even the coolest artist to get the nod this time around.
I'm only happy when it rains.
Garbage's self-titled, queer, stupid girl, only happy when it rains. Garbage's self-titled is another one of those records. It just absolutely speaks for itself. Well done, no notes, 10 out of 10. Golf clap. It's nice to see the Grammys get it at least partially right again, for a change. But, you know, yeah, there were still snubs, even in a year as quiet as 96. But again, there aren't like a ton necessarily. This year also feels like a case of, well, who the hell else can we put here? These were the biggest splashes, and like, fuck, dude, there's just not much else happening. That being said, though, there are still some pretty noticeable absences here. Hip-hop really gets the shaft again this year, as Jay-Z's Reasonable Doubt, Lil Kim's Hardcore, Busta Rhymes' debut, and even the Fugees all get snubbed. The Fugees, well, okay, the Fugees didn't get snubbed at the Grammys. They clean up pretty nicely, but they didn't get nominated for Best New Artist for some bizarre reason. And don't worry, we're not done talking about them just yet. Spoiler alert. Some other big noticeable debuts that got passed over though: Matchbox 20, Placebo, Modest Mouse, The Eels, Fatboy Slim, DJ Shadow, and you know, there's a handful of others I probably could have thrown on here, but I'd say these are some of the heaviest potential hitters, and I don't know, even then I feel like a lot of these artists would go on to do better later in their careers. I don't know, what can I tell you? 96 was just kind of a quiet year, at least in terms of like new and debuting artists. There wasn't much to pick from. But back to LeAnn Rimes. Oh, was LeAnn Rimes cursed, though? See, this one's kinda tough to call. I absolutely don't think she was the right pick. I mean, come on, fucking No Doubt and Garbage are right fucking there! But something else to consider when it comes to LeAnn Rimes, she won the Best New Artist Grammy when she was 14. Yeah, this gal right here, 14 years old. I did not know that until I researched this. I just always thought she was older. She is literally the youngest artist to have ever won the Best New Artist. And like a lot of artists who break big as teenagers, her career was troubled. Let's put it that way. Her father originally managed her in her early years, and when she found out he was embezzling money from her, she sued him, and that process dragged on for a very long time. Not long after that, she also ended up having to sue her label for contract disputes, and untangling all of that mess took a big toll on her, and she was not well prepared to be dealing with any of it, and she had kind of a rocky beginning to her career. And her follow-up to all that mess, the album she released at the tail end of all that noise, it wasn't exactly well received, and she just was never able to really pick it back up from that point on, at least in the mainstream side of things. She was able to keep going and is still active to this day, as I previously said. Reportedly, she was even able to patch things up with her father eventually, but yikes, this poor gal has definitely been through the ringer. I can't help but feel like maybe if she'd taken off a bit later, if she hadn't had to go through all that mess with her father and her label and all that, if she'd been allowed to grow and develop a more unique style of her own before rocketing to megastardom, I feel like she might have fared better in the long run, but Oh, I don't know, y'all. How about we call this one a maybe? I wouldn't say her entire career was cursed, but it feels like one of those instances where winning the Best New Artist sure as hell didn't help her situation. Again, she's still working, she's still doing her own thing. Good on her. It's no easy task to pick up the pieces of a career when it gets smashed right out of the gate, especially when you're a damn teenager. You know, I'm happy she's at least doing well by herself these days. You know what, good on her for that. So 96 was a little dull, and 97 was also a transitional year, but this is the year where the late 90s really starts to become the late 90s, in my opinion at least. You look at the albums that debuted in 97 and you start to see the changes happening. The nu metal bands, the post-grunge bands, the boy bands. 97 is the year they all start rolling in big. But ultimately, the year is defined by two huge events. The death of Notorious B.I.G. in March, and the explosion of the Spice Girls. Seriously, look up the Wikipedia article for 1997 in music. Every other bullet point relates to the goddamn Spice Girls. They were the absolute queens of 1997. They do not show up on this list at all. Like, at all. The Spice Girls were never nominated for any Grammys. I mean, I feel like that was the right call in the end, but given how big of a deal they were, I'm shocked there isn't like a cursory nod for something. But whatever, I guess. It's 1998, we're talking about 1997, and the late 90s are officially in swing. Who's the best person to represent the new era? Who is she? Who is she? What's her name? Without looking it up, what is this singer's name? 3, 2, 1.
Paula Cole.
All right.
Okay, I know there's probably a decent amount of you who did probably get that. But I also got a young audience. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of y'all didn't. Yeah, Paula Cole. She won Best New Artist for 1998. How did that happen? Again, if you do know who Paula Cole is, hey, good on you. But chances are you're probably old, because Paula Cole just didn't do that much outside of 97 and 98. But when she did break through, she broke through big time. She wasn't just nominated for Best New Artist, she was nominated for, like, fucking everything. God damn. And, you know what sucks about all of these nominations? Best New Artist was the only one she won. Oh, yikes. Again, we're tracking the curse of the Best New Artist, and this image right here, that's pretty cursed. But you know, at the time, she was a pretty big deal. 2 huge singles, one of the artists to play the inaugural Lilith Fair, her biggest hit forever immortalized as the theme to Dawson's Creek, and on top of all that, she actually had some legit musical chops to prove her worth, too. She studied at Berkeley, learned jazz and improvisation off of Bob Stoloff, and on her records, yeah, you honestly do hear it. She's got chops, y'all. I went back and listened to that breakout record, and like, honestly, it's pretty damn good. I really enjoyed this. But it's also very much a style of music, well, I like to call it mom jeans. You know, mom jeans. It's mom jeans. This is mom jeans music. It's stuff your mom probably listened to back in the day. And probably still does today. But like, it is very well executed mom jeans. It's in that same vein as, say, Suzanne Vega, Natalie Merchant, or Lisa Loeb. It's that sort of light, super soft rock, female singer-songwriter sort of vibe that, you know, is very non-threatening, but is very technically well executed and very well performed by some very talented ladies. I don't know, it's mom jeans. Not everything that's mom jeans is lame. I'd say Paula Cole is one of the good mom jeans artists. But I have to be as objective as humanly possible here. Even though I enjoyed it, was this really the best choice for 1998's Best New Artist? So, y'all, I really do want to stick up for Paula Cole. Like I said up top, I like her music. I do generally like a lot of the stuff that she's done. I'm in Paula Cole's corner for this one. But it's very hard to stick up for her when her competition this year is...
I've been a bad, bad girl.
Yeah, y'all, this is the year of Fiona Apple, of Tidal. I mean, this is hard to debate. If you want to give the Best New Artist to a Lilith Fair artist, Paula Cole isn't even the best Lilith Fair artist you could have given it to, you know what I mean? I do really like Paula Cole's music, but she ain't Fiona Apple. And if you ain't Fiona Apple, then I don't give a rat's ass. Another big how did she not win candidate? Damn, y'all, Erykah Badu, for real. Again, no disrespect to Paula Cole, just competition this year is stiff as hell. Badu roared into the popular consciousness with Baduism, and her smooth, seductive as hell neo-soul just melted hearts and blew minds. So, post-production crash, stepping in here for a second. Sometime in the 2010s or so, Erykah Badu, sadly really went off the rails. Oh, yuck. Oh, yuck. God, girl. The fuck? Thankfully, they aren't all gems. And Paula Cole is certainly not the worst nominee to end up winning. For example, this award could have gone to... I don't think y'all understand how big Mbop was. It went #1 in 12... different countries simultaneously when it released. The US, the UK, Canada, Australia, Austria, Denmark, Germany, Hungary, Ireland, New Zealand, Scotland, Sweden, Switzerland. I mean, I guess on those terms alone, you kinda just had to recognize it. Even though the song was hot shit, I still think this was a little harebrained to put on this list. Hanson would basically flame out forever after Mbop, though to their credit, they would get much better just like musically once they shed the teeny bopper skin. Seriously, look up some of their like mid-2000s stuff. They actually do get good eventually, but like, I don't know, picking them for Best New Artist is still... #1 in 12 countries at once. How? Hungary, Austria, explain this to me. Oh, y'all, and before I forget, this year, this is finally the year where gangsta rap gets recognized. Yes, it finally happens. They missed the NWA, they missed Dre and Snoop, they missed the Wu-Tang, they even missed both Pac and Biggie. Please tell me they picked someone good to carry the torch.
I know you're still living your life after death. Every move. I'm far through the world, even though I'm young, I'm making my bed.
He's so handsome.
Fuck you, Grammys. Just fuck you. So in 97, I also have to admit the pool of new artists is still a little bit shallow, but this year is also filthy with albums from artists that would help pave the way for the future. We see the big hitters of nu metal finally begin to introduce themselves. Names like Coal Chamber, Seven Dust, and the almighty Limp Bizkit drop their initial offerings. This is also the year Deftones drop Around the Fur. The post-grunge scene is also starting to make a lot of new noise, with the likes of Days of the News debut, Our Lady Peace's breakout second record, and of course we cannot forget Should Have Been Dead on a Sunday Morning, Bringing My Head, and No Time for Mourning, I ain't getting no tea. Lol, Creed. Outside of that, though, it's a little sparse. There's some band named Kara's Flowers shows up in 97. Can't say I've ever heard of them. I'm sure they'll probably amount to nothing. And we can't also forget the big debuts from folks like Missy Elliott, Daft Punk, Will Smith also dropped Big Willie style this year. Again, given the Grammys' taste in hip-hop overall, I'm not saying it would have been a good choice, I'm just saying I'm shocked it's not here. We also see big debuts from the likes of NSYNC, very surprised this isn't nominated, Third Eye Blind, Savage Garden, Children of Bodom, Smash Mouth, Don't Laugh, Fushu Meng was way better than it had any right to be. And not to mention the single most important debut of the entire year, nay, the entire decade. A little band out of Finland called His Infernal Majesty. Anyone? Him? Anyone? Poor Finland. They get shunned on my show, and they get shunned at Eurovision. Big Gay Hulk was robbed, that's all I'm saying. But yeah, coming back to Paula Cole, 97-98 was her year, but like I already mentioned, these were kinda her only years. She blew up big, and to her credit, she was a damn good artist. But she also ran into a lot of bad luck along the way. Her follow-up ended up alienating a major portion of her original audience. At least that's what the general narrative seems to be, though I spun that record too while researching this, and if her audience was alienated, I am not sure why. It sounds a lot like her previous record, and to be honest, it still sounds pretty good. I suppose it is a bit more upbeat. The production definitely feels a bit more pop-centric. Not to like a Jewel degree or anything, but, you know, I guess it's a little different, but it's not that crazy. Maybe the light-up dance floor is a little much. But whatever the reason might have been, folks did not buy her next record, and after Amen flopped, Cole decided to go on hiatus and focus on being a mom for a little bit. She did make a comeback in the late 2000s though, and these days, she still releases on the indies and focuses more on jazz and folk. And again, she's still pretty good. I listened to some of her other later work, and it is much different, but still, she's obviously got chops, you know? The gal studied at Berklee, she studied jazz, and hell, speaking of Berklee, she now teaches full-time there too, in the vocal department, from what my research has said. Again, nice seeing her come full circle like that. So, was she cursed? Again, I think we can say maybe on this. This is definitely a sort of cursed situation. Like, her pop music career, at least, seems to have had a big ol' nasty curse placed on it. But, you know, she never seemed like much of a pop artist anyway, and she did eventually find her place, and she seems very happy and content there. I'd say she probably deserved better, but it's nice to see her thriving in her own niche, and, you know, she seems to be extremely happy there. So, you know, a perfectly respectable second act for an artist like her. Good on you, Paula. And finally, we're at the end of the decade, technically, but yeah, make no mistakes. 98 is when the late 90s officially starts revving into high gear, and y'all, ooh, this year too, we are gonna have lots to discuss. We are officially in full swing. of the late 90s. Nu metal has pulled metal almost completely out of a nasty slump period. Post-grunge and alt-rock have fully taken up the torch that grunge left behind. Hip-hop has finally hit that comfortable middle ground where it's still dangerous and exciting, but fun and dancey enough for most normies to enjoy. Pop punk has given a brand new shot in the arm to another once lethargic genre, and its bratty little cousin emo is starting to make big noises off in the distance. It's the era of TRL, Jenkos, Hot Topic, and a strange little format called MP3 that is poised to set the entire music industry on fire. Strap in, y'all. This year is gonna be pretty wild. Yo, remember back on the boogie when cats used to harmonize like...
Yo.
The Academy may have snubbed the Fugees for Best New Artist, but you know goddamn well there was no ignoring this. Yeah, even the fuddy-duddy-ass Grammys had no choice but to pay respects. In fact, if anything, they probably overcorrected when they gave this to Lauryn Hill. Remember at the top of this vid where I mentioned that Sheryl Crow was one of the most successful Best New Artists for walking away with 3 trophies? Yeah, she doesn't hold that title for very long. Lauryn Hill fucking dunked on the Grammys. She won 5 trophies that night and was nominated for 10. Not only did she take home Best New Artist, but also Best R&B Album, Best R&B Song, and R&B Vocal Performance for Doo Wop That Thing, and, no big deal.
The album of the year is The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. Lauryn Hill.
Album of the Year? And she won Album of the Year against some really stiff competition, too. She was running against Madonna, Sheryl Crow, Garbage, and Shania Twain. Yeah, remember Come On Over? She beat Come On Over to win Album of the Year. Y'all, wasn't nobody stepping up to Ms. Hill. I mean, what do you want me to do here? Slag Lauryn Hill and say she wasn't the best candidate for this award? I may be too stupid to know who SWV is, but you better believe I ain't stupid enough to diss Miss Hill. No. Absolutely the best choice, bar none. This doesn't even merit discussion. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Look, it was a great record, but no record is flawless. Lauryn's lyrics in particular, they can feel really spiteful and angry sometimes. I know on this record she's going for the whole woman scorn thing, but sometimes, especially with the context we have on her now, these lines can come off as just petty and vindictive. I mean, I get it. Wyclef was a bastard. Do we have to spend half the album bitching about it? When she isn't being bitter, her outright preachiness and self-righteous pseudo-spiritualism can really come off as trite and overbearing. But that's the thing. A lot of the judgments I make about this record, they also come with like 20, 30 years of hindsights too. Even then, I'd say a lot of this is nitpicks. I mean, the album is still a pretty solid bop from back to front, and the production is stuff of dreams. And Lauryn's ability to rap and sing,
Painful as this thing has been.
I mean, yeah, she talks a big game, but she has big chops to back it up, is the thing. I don't think this was an unfair choice at all. She absolutely deserved it. But again, 98 is also a crazy good year. There were a lot of heavy hitters in 98. And we do have to ask ourselves, was this really, truly, honestly the best possible choice. What the hell? Why am I showing you footage of an opera singer? Because an opera singer was nominated. For real, Andrea Bocelli. I mean, don't get me wrong here. He is an insanely talented baritone tenor. I mean, I probably couldn't do that. Nope. I mean, I'm not, like, mad that he's here. I'm just shocked. I mean, the Grammys do deal in classical music, but normally the classical artists stay within the classical categories. Bocelli is one of the only classical musicians to ever be nominated for Best New Artist. Again, I'm not mad. I'm just confused is all. What is he doing here? I suppose he did make a fairly big splash in '98, to his credit. He was doing a bunch of duets with folks like Sarah Brightman and Celine Dion. His record Aria eventually went platinum and led to a bunch of very high-profile performances like The President and The Queen. You don't get to be too much of a bigger deal than that, sure, but why? Best New Artist? It just... I know the Grammys tends to vote toward an older demographic, but this is like nursing home old. Jesus. Especially given that his competition this year... Yeah, you see what I mean, right? It's weird seeing the dignified Italian gentleman opera singer sharing the nomination stage with... Backstreet's back, alright! But Backstreet Boys? Yeah, I'm not shocked to see them here. Actually, what's more shocking is that NSYNC didn't get a nod last year with their debut. But you know, the Grammys tend to have a really bad habit of being super late in recognizing certain trends. If they ever even recognize them at all. But like, yeah, you knew we were gonna see the boy bands pop up eventually. And you know, Backstreet Boys, sure, I can deal. This record is a jam. Someone else who looks awkward performing next to Andrea Bocelli. Wide open spaces. Yeah, the Chicks. Though this is also another potentially confusing entry because their big breakout record, Wide Open Spaces, was like their 4th record overall. Like, damn, it took them a while to get here. But again, this was the one that people paid attention to, and you know what? They were right to pick it, because this album, while it is a bit dated today, honestly, I still really enjoyed it. This was a nice little nostalgic romp through 90s country. I had to listen to a decent amount of 90s country as research for these videos, and people, so much of 90s country is just...
Daddy, please don't take the girl. Welcome to Earth, where to rock from the sun. I take redneck, make baby, meet Star Trek.
Piss. But the Chicks, you know, they're fun, they're not too corny, they have a great look and a lot of raw talent. Definitely a good choice if you want to throw a country artist in the Best New Artist mold for this year, absolutely. Those gals weren't cursed by the Best New Artist Grammy, they were cursed by George W. Bush. Motherfucker. And our final nominee for 1999 is... Nothing's right, I'm torn. Ooh. Oh no. Damn it. Y'all. Oh shit. Oh, see, here's the thing. Like the song itself, I'm torn on this one. While I do love this song, and Natalie overall does have some real bangers in her catalog if you know her stuff, oh man. I hate to do this to you twice in one video, but quick, name one other Natalie Imbruglia song without Googling it. 3, 2, 1, yeah. Yeah, she's probably not the best choice for this slot. I guess I probably should have prefaced that with if you're American, name another song Natalie did, because she did see greater success in her native Australia and parts of Europe. But in the US, y'all, she's pretty much a one-hit wonder. Hell, Torn technically only got up to number 42 on the American charts, so technically she's a no-hit wonder over here. But like, again, she's that kind of mom jeans music that I really, really like. And she's definitely got some other good stuff floating around in her back catalog. She's worth a casual glance if you really want to poke around. Is she the best choice for Best New Artist in 1999? It pains me to say it, but no, y'all. Because I mean, y'all, it's 1998. There is so much to choose from. It is an avalanche of new artists making big debuts and making huge splashes in their respective scenes and on the scene as a whole. In this year alone, we have, in no particular order, Rufus Wainwright, DMX, Tyrese Gibson, System of a Down, Black Eyed Peas, this was back when they were actually good, Big Pun, Jermaine Dupri, Rob Zombie, Queens of the Stone Age, Black Label Society, Train, Dropkick Murphys, Fuel, Indina Menzel, Soulfly, Maya, Eve 6, Air, Groove Armada, Death Cab for Cutie, Snow Patrol, Destiny's Goddamn Child, and those are just the folks who might have had a snowball's chance in hell at getting on with the Grammys. Kinda, sorta. I don't know, I just kind of picked the ones I liked, I guess. I even left out a few artists who released, like, their first demos and EPs. Again, not formal debuts, but if you wanted to be a real stickler about things, you could also technically put Coldplay, The White Stripes, and Muse in this list. Y'all, I'm just saying, when you see all these names scrolling by, it's real weird that Andrea Bocelli is here. That's all I'm saying. But now we need to come back to Lauryn. And this, oh boy, this is the hard part, isn't it? Did Lauryn deserve to win, even despite the tough as hell competition that 98 had to offer? I still say, yeah, she absolutely is really the only artist who could win this Grammy. Let's be real. She dominated on Miseducation, and even though a lot of great stuff came out in 98, Lauryn probably released one of the best records of the entire fucking decade. But man, people, it came at a cost. Lauryn would rule 98, but as the story goes, she would never dominate another year again. Fame absolutely wrecked Lauryn Hill, and she was not ready to handle it when it arrived on her doorstep. Her mental health quickly deteriorated, and she would make a long series of, let's be generous and call them unhelpful decisions. She fell in with a whack job spiritual leader, released an absolute train wreck of an unplugged record for MTV. She got sued a bunch of times, she committed tax fraud, got arrested, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on. Remember when I said the Grammys almost overcorrected for the Fugees? Well, I mean, the thing is, Lauryn reportedly already had a bit of an ego and deteriorating mental health even when she was still with the Fugees. When the Academy showered her with this metric fuck ton of praise and recognition, I can't help but feel like it went to her head a bit. Again, to her credit, Lauryn did put out an absolute banger, but the fame, it was all too much, too soon. Once the heat died down and it was time to follow through on a next record, she just could never work it out. You know, she still hasn't to this day. And it's really fucking sad. She still does occasionally perform, and she pops up in places here and there, but it's sparse, unpredictable, and even on those off chances where we do get to see Lauryn out in the wild, she just seems so damn unhappy to be there. She wasn't the wrong choice to win Best New Artist, but given the trajectory of her career and how she ultimately turned out, I hate saying it, but yeah, she absolutely feels like she got cursed. I mean, a lot of artists fail to live up to their initial success, especially when you score as big as Lauryn Hill does. But Lauryn just ran into so many demons along the way, both personal and professional. She never even found the ability to try and live up to her next record. And while we'll always have miseducation, it is sad to see that that's likely all we're ever gonna get. Sorry to end things on such a down note there, but you see what I mean, right? The 90s were a lot of things. They were exciting, twisted, hilarious, confusing, and occasionally very, very tragic. But man, they were never boring. And the Grammys, again, their record is extremely hit and miss here. And in other decades, it gets even crazier than that. But hey, thanks for watching, y'all. We have now officially gotten through the entire 90s. Yeah, you see what I mean? This was an exciting friggin' decade to talk about, especially in terms of Best New Artists. You see why this was a good place to start. Again, let me know if you enjoyed these videos, because we can definitely revisit this topic on some of the other decades. The 80s are also pretty crazy. The 2000s in particular is very nuts, and even the 2010s do have interesting stories to tell. You know what? Let me know in the comments below. Maybe somewhere down the line we can tackle another decade. In the meantime, though, I'm Crash Thompson. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see ya when I see ya. Special thanks to our $5 and above patrons: Alpha Rain, David Perez, Dylan Rare Hunter, Foxy Lover 92, John T. Bowen, Constructivist, Lee Hazel, Nick Barrows Johnson, Yoshi Taichi, Artemi Musha, Alex Sobolou, Chris Doman, Cordelia of the Seas, David Prince, Elizabeth, Errol Henderson, Freddie Thomas, Gina at Love B. Jones, Jared Stone, Jason Semler, Jeremy Ramos, Joseph D., Cole, Lainey Wilson, Lilith Estelle, Mars Hunter, Mexican Link 1986, Michael K., Rocked, Rowan Cookie, Sarah Aubin, Stephanie Von Wagner, Ted Z, The Pighead, Warped Kia, Akshay W., Stephen Hafner, Mark Grondin, and Dominic Noble.